have no fear.
Hey guys, welcome back from that intense match between it was Solar Fleet and Villore Accord. Sorry, escaped my mind for a moment there. We saw double Vindy versus double Mac. We had some deacons on the side of Vindies, and the Mac team bringing mowers instead of the more standard T3 cruisers. Really, what's your opinion on the mower as an Alliance tournament spaceship as compared to bringing a T3D? I mean, it's a point less, right?
Yeah, I guess it's an interesting choice actually. The mowers were blaster fit, so they were blaster brawlers. But I think they kept their range because I don't think you want to go against two Vindicators and Hyperions in your mower.
Not so much. And then, I mean, what did you think of the match overall in terms of choice of setup versus choice of setup?
I think Solar Fleet went with like the quad battleship core. I mean, it looked good on paper. You've got lots of EHP you have to grind through, lots of damage up close, but in the end, you're probably going to get controlled, and that's what Villore did. They controlled the battleships, they split them off. That blaster damage isn't going to do anything past 20 kilometers, so split off the Hyperions and the Vindicators. Max just brawled in, tried their best surviving, and the Max lived quite long, surprisingly, against those four battleships. But
well, they started at 8 to 10k.
Yeah, they were
and two Hyperions.
They were whooping
I was
zero.
just like, yeah, this is in the bag, like, you know, but apparently not. Apparently, Macarios are very hard to kill if you happen to be flying a couple of Indies and some Hyperions.
They'll get off the mark fast. They're very agile
very
battleships as they go,
definitely.
not just with the warp speed bonus getting onto the arena quickly. So let's talk a bit about those deacons that were on the Vindicators side with Solar. We saw Solar ban Hugin Rapier, so obviously they were very scared about the deacons being webbed and controlled. Aurelio, would you like to go over briefly some points about the logistics frigates, the inherent weakness about controlling them?
Yeah, basically deacons or T2 Logifrigs in general, they're quite fast, but the thing is they are quite vulnerable to control. So newts, webs, obviously they're very scared of those webs, but newts, webs, damps and jams could also be quite an issue, although damps not much of an issue anymore because scripts are banned in this AT, but the thing is that also deacons have a very, very low optimal and fall off, so they can only rep to 30 kilometers before their reps become next to useless. Yeah. So the problem is, like, do you want to rep what's being primaried, or do you want to risk, you know, getting primaried yourself and maybe losing your Logi wing? So these are the things that you have to, you know, think about when you're a T2 Logi frig pilot. Is that got to find a good range to whether engage or rather to, you know, we need to leave. So you have to be careful about that kind of stuff. So yeah.
The banning choices do make sense as well, because I mean, I think we were saying earlier that with Logifrigs, because you not only have to stay within range of the thing you want to rep, but you have to stay within range of each other, so you can keep your Logi partner alive. That means that if you get webbed by a Hugin or a Rapier and you're out at range, then you can shut both ships down simply by webbing one of them, and that's definitely a control weakness of using Logifrigs.
When it comes to making those bans reload, do you think that, say somebody bans Hugin Rapier against you, they clearly don't want to be webbed. Do you think that of your setup lists, based on those bans, disregard what you're taking in the first place and go, we're taking a comp with hyenas because they clearly don't want to be webbed, so webs are going to be good, so let's go for it. Do you think that's a valid choice to make, or do you think go with what you're planning to bring?
I hate to say it, but it depends what team. It depends what your team you're going against. If you're going against, like, you know, quite a large tier team, maybe Tuskers or Pandemic Legion, they're probably thinking they obviously have some sort of backup to counter those webs, because if you're going to bring hyenas to whatever comp you're going to bring, they're obviously going to think, like, there's only two other ships in the game that can web to that range, a hyena and the Maracha. So obviously they're probably, if they're going to bring like a brawling setup or like a kitey setup, they might bring ECM and fill those ECM with red jammers, and you might be unlucky and could be like hard countered basically.
Yeah, you have to be very careful basing kind of like switching up your strategy based off bans as well, because you never know, it could be a bluff. If you go in and you've fallen for the ban bait, as it were, you could go in and find yourself completely countered straight off the bat. with no hope of winning the match.
PL are pretty famous for, Seamus especially, when he used to be team captain, was quite well known for really using the ban to the maximum potential, really getting in the head of the opponent's team with what he banned, and then bringing a comp that complemented the bans in a way that people didn't expect, or using the bans to force them into bringing something that he wanted them to bring, and just using it around rather than necessarily bans that my team is bad against this ship, therefore I will ban this ship.
Definitely.
Moving on, we have PFR, Phoebe Freeport Republic, versus 404 Alliance Not Found. Now, 404 Alliance Not Found are one of the many AT teams that hail from Syndicate. Syndicate seems to be a hotbed for AT teams. You know, you got your Rote Capel, your Castabouts, many more, Clockwork Pineapple as well back in the day. And then PFR, the guys who, after the Phoebe introduction of fatigue changes, set out to create free ports across New Eden, but unfortunately recently closed their doors and started shutting down. But thankfully, they have kept the lights on just long enough for an AT team to come through. They did a pretty good run last year.
Yeah, they did
pretty well. I hope that they've still got those core guys there, so they can show us some good games against 404. I mean, you know, we bring up the Phoebe jump changes. Rocket, you're a man who is involved with the capital game, if you will. How did this is somewhat outside the Alliance Storm, I guess, but how did the Phoebe jump changes really affect the meta and how alliances worked?
Well, ultimately, it was a change to power projecting in Eve and a large entity being able to move very heavy, powerful ships across the map in order to take people's space. Now that you could no longer do that, the idea of Phoebe Freeport was the fact that they wouldn't, you know, they could go as a smallish group and take space without really being contested or being steamrolled by a much larger, more powerful group. It did a lot in the way of smaller groups, both capital and not, and non-capital. Gives roaming gangs and such more freedom, less likelihood of being hot dropped within range of a local capital power.
Mm-hmm. So in this match, we obviously don't know what the teams are bringing yet. They're not on grid, but what do you think the meta is shaping out to be so far, you two? Of what we've seen today, what are the main archetypes that we've been seeing? What's shaking out to be the main comps this tournament with regards to ships and style and archetypes of flying? Let's start with you, Rocket X.
Well, I think right from the get-go, we were very aware that there would be a lot of missiles in this tournament. Certainly on the heavy tank and DPS side of it, we've seen a couple of rattlesnakes, mainly Scorpion Navy issues though when you're going for a super heavy shield tank. On the flip side of it, the baseline setup that we've been discussing most of the morning, which is the Typhoon fleet issues.
Rellid?
I think it's actually quite well balanced, especially in the first weekend where a lot of low tier teams kind of bring out their wildcard setups like Macarials, Vindicators, things like that, which are not really used in the second or the third weekend, but they can have some success in the first weekend. So it's really hard to say in a lot of the static of all the other teams bring in whatever they want. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what will happen. I think it'll get a lot more clearer tomorrow on the weekend after, where it's just going to be, if it's going to be these bands, they're going to be this setup. But we don't know. There could be some surprises out there. There could be some meta shakers. We'll see.
Fantastic. So let's now go into our predictions between PFR and 404. Royaload, who would you put your money on?
I'm going to put my money on PFR because those dudes last year were pretty solid. So I hope those guys are still here, still in the team. So yeah, I'm going to go PFR.
Rocket X?
I like PFR, but I think I'm going to go 404 on this one because they've made an interesting decision. They've decided to try and ban the Balgorn, but they're also bringing one.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Is there going to be a getting around again, or maybe?
Oh, mind screw with the bans, as we were discussing earlier. Just before we go into the match, I'd like to do a big, massive shout out again to EveBet and CCP for the support they give us. CCP put a ding out through the in-game browser or the in-game client to get everyone on the stream. So thank you all for tuning and watching. I hope you're having a good time with the production we're putting on today. Remember to click that follow button on the stream below, and also check out our YouTube channel for all AT cool stuff. And the stream, generally speaking, has something like 38 hours of content each week for you guys to watch and enjoy. Still, let's go into the match between PFR and 404. Let's hand it over to the casters, Chesser and Vrain.